The classroom smelled like 17 different species trying to share the same air. Diana Ross walked between the rows of seats watching her students settle into their places. Some had 4 legs, some had wings folded against their backs, and one of them seemed to be mostly water contained in a portable tank. Teaching threat assessment to aliens meant dealing with every kind of body language imaginable. "Good morning, everyone," Diana said, keeping her voice steady and calm. "Today we're going to talk about something that gets people killed more than any weapon in the galaxy." A quilvan in the front row clicked its mandibles together. The insect-like creature had armor plating that could stop small arms fire and claws that could tear through steel. It looked at Diana with compound eyes that reflected her image 100 times. "What kills more than weapons?" the quilvan asked, its translator device making the clicks sound like words. "Misunderstanding?" Diana replied. She pulled up a holographic display in the center of the room. Images of different species appeared, frozen in various poses. Every species in this room evolved to survive. You all developed ways to warn each other before fights started. The problem happens when Species A doesn't recognize Species B's warning signs. A massive bront shifted in its reinforced seat. The creature looked like someone had crossed an elephant with a boulder and then made it twice as large. Its skin had natural armor plates that could withstand extreme temperatures. When it spoke, the floor vibrated. "Humans are in this class," the bront said slowly. "But humans have no armor, no claws, no venom. Why are you listed as a deathworlder species?" Several students made sounds that Diana had learned meant agreement or curiosity. She had expected this question. She always got this question. "That's what we're going to explore this week," Diana said. She moved to the holographic display and changed the image. "Let's start with what you all already know. Quilvan, show us your threat display." The quilvan stood up from its seat. Its body segments separated slightly, making it look larger. Its mandibles spread wide, showing the cutting edges inside. The abdomen raised up and everyone could see the stinger that normally stayed hidden. Every student in the room instinctively leaned back. "Good," Diana said. "Clear, visible, unmistakable. Anyone who sees that knows a quilvan is ready to fight. Bront, your turn." The bront stood and the floor actually groaned under the weight shift. The creature's chest expanded, making it look even more massive. It stomped 1 foot down, creating a boom that echoed off the walls. The armor plates along its spine rose up like a ridge of mountains. "Excellent," Diana said. "Size display combined with sound." "Very effective." She looked around the room. "Syl, would you mind demonstrating?" The aquatic creature in the tank changed colors. Its skin went from peaceful blue to angry red in waves. Fins extended from its body like blades. The water in its tank seemed to churn with its movement. "Thank you," Diana said. All 3 students returned to their normal states and sat back down. Notice what all of these have in common. They're obvious. They're impossible to miss. They're designed to be seen and understood even by other species. "So what do humans do?" asked a student in the back. This one was a Dravix, a predator species with scales and teeth that could bite through bone. Its name was Gresh, and Diana had already noted that it carried itself with too much confidence. "Do you puff up? Change colors? Make noise?" "Humans have threat displays," Diana said carefully. "But they're not like yours. Our evolution took a different path." "Because you're weak," Gresh said. It wasn't quite a question. Diana looked at the Dravix for a long moment. Around the room, students waited to see how their instructor would respond to the challenge. This was partly why Gresh said it, Diana knew. Testing boundaries, seeing what would happen. "Humans survived on a death world," Diana said, keeping her tone educational rather than defensive. "Earth has extreme weather, dangerous predators, diseases that evolve faster than most species can adapt, and natural disasters that can destroy entire regions without warning. We didn't survive because we're the strongest or the fastest. We survived because we learned to work together and because we're very, very good at violence when we need to be." "All species can be violent," Gresh said, waving one clawed hand dismissively. "True," Diana agreed. "But most species are violent in predictable ways. Your threat displays are clear, because your violence is straightforward. You attack or you don't. Humans are different. We have levels of response, layers of warning, and that's what makes us dangerous." She changed the holographic display again. Now it showed humans in various situations. Images pulled from Earth's history and daily life. Humans talking to each other, standing in groups, facing each other in conflict. "By the end of this week, you'll understand how to read human threat displays," Diana said. "You'll learn to recognize when a human is just talking, when they're setting boundaries, when they're preparing to defend themselves, and when they've decided that violence is about to happen. The last one is the most important, because once a human reaches that point, you have about 2 seconds to change what's going to happen next. 2 seconds? Asked the Quilvan, mandibles clicking with interest. That's all? That's all, Diana confirmed. Humans give warnings, but the final warning is very, very short. Miss it, and you'll learn the hard way why we're classified as a deathworld species. Gresh made a sound that the translator rendered as a laugh. I look forward to this demonstration. I'm sure you do, Diana said quietly. Something in her voice made a few students sit up straighter, but Gresh didn't seem to notice. We'll do practical exercises starting tomorrow. Tonight I want you all to review the materials I'm sending to your datapads. Study how humans interact with each other. Pay attention to the small things, the way we stand, how we use our hands, how our voices change. She dismissed the class and students began filing out in their various ways of moving. Walking, slithering, hovering, rolling. The Bront had to turn sideways to fit through the door. The Quilvan climbed up the wall and exited through a vent designed for flying species. Gresh was one of the last to leave. As it passed Diana's desk, it paused. No offense meant, instructor, Gresh said, but I've fought humans before. Sparring matches at other academies. They're quick, I'll give them that, but they go down like anyone else when you hit them hard enough. Sparring matches have rules, Diana replied. She was organizing data pads on her desk, not looking at the Draviks, and referees who stop things before anyone gets seriously hurt. That's not the same as a real threat situation. I suppose we'll see, Gresh said, and left the classroom. Diana finished organizing her materials. Another instructor, a Felvan with fur and 6 limbs, stuck its head through the doorway. That one is going to be a problem, the Felvan said, gesturing after Gresh. Yes, Diana agreed. She pulled up Gresh's file on her datapad. History of aggression, multiple warnings from previous instructors, complaints from sparring partners about excessive force. But that's why these classes exist. Better to learn here than in the field where it could start a diplomatic incident. You think you can teach it? Diana looked up from the datapad. Her face was calm, but her eyes were thoughtful. I think it will learn one way or another. The question is how much it will hurt before the lesson sinks in. The Felvan made a worried sound. Be careful. Draviks hold grudges. So do humans, Diana said softly. But we're usually better at letting them go when it's the smart thing to do. She powered down the holographic display and gathered her materials. Tomorrow would start the practical exercises. The students would begin learning to recognize the subtle signs that humans use to communicate threat and boundaries. Most of them would learn quickly. They were here to become security officers for the Galactic Council after all. They were smart and motivated, but there was always one student who had to learn the hard way. One student who couldn't just accept the lesson without testing it personally. This class, that student was Gresh. Diana had taught this course 11 times before. She knew how it would go. The students would be skeptical until they saw the demonstration. Then they would understand. Then they would actually start paying attention to the details. She just hoped Gresh would be smart enough to back down when the moment came. Because Diana really didn't want to hurt a student, but she would if she had to. That was part of the lesson, too. Humans didn't make threats they weren't willing to follow. Through on. That was what made the warnings worth paying attention to. Diana locked the classroom behind her and headed down the corridor of Station Harmony 7. Around her, dozens of species went about their daily routines. The station was a monument to cooperation, a place where natural enemies learned to work together for the common good. But cooperation only worked when everyone understood the rules. And the most important rule was recognizing when someone was warning you to stop. Tomorrow, her students would start learning that lesson. She wondered if Gresh would pass the test. The gymnasium was designed to accommodate every body type in the Galactic Council. High ceilings for flying species, deep pools for aquatic ones, and reinforced floors for the really heavy students. Diana stood in the center of the training space, watching her students warm up in their various ways. Pair up, she called out. Different species only. I want you working with someone whose body language you don't instinctively understand. The students shuffled around, finding partners. The Quilvan paired with a Sill. The Bront carefully partnered with a smaller Laven, a rabbit-like creature that barely came up to the Bront's knee. Gresh the Draviks ended up with a Quelon, another small species covered in soft feathers. Today's exercise is about recognition, Diana explained, walking between the pairs. Partner A, you're going to slowly shift from a neutral state to a threatened state. Use your species' natural signals. Partner B, you're going to identify the exact moment when your partner crosses from calm to threatened. Call it out when you see it. She demonstrated with a volunteer, a student named Wes from a species that communicated largely through color changes. As Diana watched, Wes shifted from gentle greens to darker, more aggressive purples. There, Diana said, pointing. See how the color pattern changed? That's the transition point. That's when you know Wes is feeling threatened and might respond defensively. The pairs began practicing. Diana moved between them, offering corrections and observations. Most students were doing well, learning to read the unfamiliar signals from their partners. Then she reached Gresh and the Quilon. The Quilon, whose name was Pip, had feathers that were standing on end. Its large eyes were wide and it kept trying to back away. Gresh kept moving forward, closing the distance that Pip was trying to create. Gresh, Diana said, her voice firm. The exercise requires you to hold position while your partner identifies your threat state. You're not supposed to advance. I'm just making it realistic, Gresh replied, showing its teeth in what might have been a smile. In the field, threats don't stand still. In the field, you'll be trying to prevent escalation, not cause it, Diana said. Back up 3 steps and hold position. Gresh did, but Diana could see the Dravix wasn't taking the exercise seriously. This was a game to it. A chance to dominate, to prove strength. She made a note on her datapad and moved on. No point in stopping the whole class for one difficult student. Not yet. An hour later, Diana called everyone back to the center of the gymnasium. The students gathered, some of them breathing hard, others looking thoughtful. Good work today, she said. Most of you are starting to understand the concept. You're seeing that threat displays aren't just about the display itself. They're about communication, about giving the other person a chance to back down before anyone gets hurt. Why give a chance? Asked Gresh. The Dravix had barely worked up any sweat during the exercises. In nature, predators don't warn prey. They attack. You're not a mindless predator, Diana replied. None of us are. We're all sapient beings capable of making choices. The point of threat displays is to let others know what choice you're about to make, so they can make their own choice in response. She pulled up a new holographic display. This one showed various species in conflict situations. Some resulted in fights. Others ended with one party backing down. Look at these statistics, Diana said. Species with clear threat displays have lower rates of serious injury in conflicts. Know why? Because both parties can assess the situation and decide if it's worth fighting. Sometimes the threatened party backs down. Sometimes the aggressor realizes the target is more dangerous than expected and retreats. Either way, both parties survive without injury. Survival through cowardice, Gresh muttered. Diana stopped what she was doing. She turned to look directly at the Dravix. The gymnasium got very quiet. Survival through intelligence, Diana corrected. Her voice hadn't gotten louder, but something about it made every student pay attention. Every species in this room comes from a world that tried to kill them. You all evolved to survive, but the species that made it to the stars weren't the ones who fought every battle. They were the ones who learned when to fight and when to walk away. She let that sit for a moment, then continued with the lesson. Now let's talk about humans specifically, Diana said. She changed the display to show images of humans in various situations. Human evolution was unusual. We developed as pursuit predators on a world with extreme environmental challenges. We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We're not the most venomous or the best armored. So what are you? Asked the Quilvan, genuinely curious. Persistent, Diana replied. Adaptable, social, and very good at pattern recognition. Humans survive by working together in groups, by remembering what worked and what didn't, and by being able to keep going long after other species would have given up. She showed footage of humans running, not sprinting but steady jogging that went on and on. Humans used to hunt by following prey until it collapsed from exhaustion, Diana explained. It took hours, sometimes days. The prey was faster, but humans just kept coming, never stopping, never giving up. Eventually, the prey would be too tired to run anymore. Some students shifted uncomfortably. There was something unsettling about the idea of a predator that didn't need to be faster or stronger, just more stubborn. But humans also formed complex social groups, Diana continued. We lived in tribes, then villages, then cities. Millions of humans living close together. That created a problem. Humans are dangerous to each other. We needed ways to resolve conflicts without killing our own community members. So you developed threat displays, the Bronze said, understanding dawning in its voice. Exactly, Diana confirmed. But human threat displays are different from most species. We have graduated responses, levels of warning. It starts with verbal communication. Humans will usually tell you when you're crossing a boundary. Stop that. Back off. Leave me alone. Direct statements. She showed video of humans in disagreements, pointing out the verbal warnings. If verbal warnings don't work, humans move to postural changes, Diana continued. We square our shoulders, face the threat directly, take up more space. These are still warnings, still chances to back down. More footage played, showing humans in increasingly tense situations. Then comes proximity control, Diana said. A human might step forward, claiming space, making the threat back up. This is a stronger warning. The human is showing they're willing to get physical if necessary. The students were watching intently now. Even Gresh seemed interested. After that, humans prepare physically, Diana explained. We shift our weight. Our hands position themselves naturally for fighting. Our breathing changes. To another human, these signs are clear. We're at the edge of violence. And then, asked Pip, the small Quilon, speaking up for the first time. Diana paused. This was the important part, the part they needed to understand. Then comes the final warning, she said quietly. And that's what we're going to focus on tomorrow. Because once a human gives the final warning, you have seconds to make a choice. Back down or find out why humans are classified as deathworlders. What is this final warning? Gresh asked. Some kind of sound? A smell? What? You'll see tomorrow, Diana said. We'll do a field exercise. Real scenario, real stress, real danger. You'll learn to recognize it when it matters. She dismissed the class. Students filed out, talking among themselves. Diana heard fragments of conversation, speculation about what the human final warning might be. Some thought it was a battle cry. Others suggested it might be a chemical signal. None of them had guessed the truth yet. As the gymnasium emptied, another instructor approached Diana. This one was a Telvin, a species known for their diplomatic skills and emotional intelligence. You're building up to something, the Telvin observed. I'm teaching, Diana replied. You're preparing them for a specific lesson, the Telvin pressed. I've seen you teach this course before. You're setting up a demonstration. Diana began powering down the holographic equipment. Every class needs a practical component. Theory only goes so far. Be careful, the Telvin warned. That Dravik student is unstable, pushing boundaries. I've seen the type before. So have I, Diana said. She finished with the equipment and turned to face the other instructor. That's exactly why this lesson is necessary. Better to learn here in a controlled environment than out in the field where someone could actually get killed. You're very calm about this. I've done this before, Diana reminded him. 11 times, 11 different classes. There's always one student who needs to see it firsthand, who can't just accept the teaching without testing it. And if something goes wrong, Diana looked at the Telvin steadily. Then I'll handle it. That's what I'm trained for. The Telvin didn't look reassured, but it nodded and left. Diana stood alone in the empty gymnasium. Tomorrow would be the field exercise. She had already designed the scenario, set up the variables, arranged for additional safety measures that the students wouldn't see. Gresh would push too far. Diana knew the pattern. Overconfident predator species often did. They saw smaller, softer beings and assumed weakness. They didn't understand that humans had been prey and predator both and learned lessons from both sides. The final warning existed because humans understood violence intimately, understood it well enough to know that preventing it was better than engaging in it, but also understood it well enough to end things quickly and decisively when prevention failed. Tomorrow her students would learn that lesson. Diana just hoped Gresh was smart enough to back down when the moment came. Because if it wasn't, it would learn the much harder lesson about what happens after the warning. Diana dimmed the lights in the lecture hall and brought up her presentation. The students settled into their seats, data pads ready. Today was theory before tomorrow's practical exercise. Human communication is complex, Diana began, displaying images of humans in conversation. We use words, but we also use tone, volume, facial expressions, body position, and dozens of other signals simultaneously. Other humans read all of these automatically. You need to learn to see them consciously. She zoomed in on a human face. Look at the eyes, the muscles around them. When humans are relaxed and friendly, you see something called crow's feet, these little wrinkles at the corners. When a human is genuinely happy, these appear with their smile. The image changed to show a different expression. Now look at this. The mouth is smiling, but the eyes aren't. No crow's feet. The smile doesn't reach the eyes. This is a polite smile, not a genuine one. And this, she changed the image again, is a human who is angry but trying to hide it. See how the jaw is tense? The muscles here and here are tight. Pip, the small Quillon, raised a wing. How do you expect us to see such tiny differences? We're not human. Practice, Diana replied. The same way I learned to read Quilvan mandible positions and Bront ear movements. You study, you observe, you practice. By the time you graduate from this academy, reading human expressions should be second nature. She moved through more slides showing different human postures and positions. When a human feels safe, they're relaxed, Diana explained. Open posture, loose shoulders, casual stance. As they become uncomfortable or threatened, the body changes. Watch for these signs. The presentation showed a sequence of images, the same human in progressively more guarded positions. Shoulders pull back and up. The stance widens for better balance. Arms position themselves between the human and the threat. These are all unconscious responses. The human might not even realize they're doing it. But what about your verbal warnings? Asked the Bront. You said humans tell others to stop. We do, Diana confirmed. Humans prefer verbal de-escalation, but tone matters as much as words. Listen. She played audio clips. The same phrase, please step back, said in different tones. First friendly and polite, then firm, then cold, then absolutely flat and emotionless. That last one, Gresh said. The flat tone, that's the final warning. No, Diana replied. That's close, but not quite. The final warning is usually non-verbal. It's a physical gesture combined with a complete change in presence. She showed footage from Earth, historical and modern. Humans in conflict situations across thousands of years of recorded history. Different cultures, different time periods, but certain patterns appeared again and again. Notice what happens right before violence breaks out, Diana said, slowing down one clip. The human who is about to act goes very still. Not frozen, not tense, just still. Balanced. Ready. The students watched closely. In the footage, a human stood facing multiple opponents. For just a moment, everything about the human's body language changed. Then the fight began, and it was over in seconds. The stillness is part of it, Diana continued. But there's something else. Something that appears across human cultures throughout history. A gesture that means the same thing everywhere. She showed more clips, different situations, different contexts, but in many of them, just before action, a human raised one hand. Palm forward at about shoulder height. Not aggressive, not a fist. Just an open hand, raised. The raised hand, Diana said. This is the human final warning. The classroom was silent. The students stared at the images. It looked so simple, so non-threatening. Just a hand in the air. I don't understand, the Quilvan said. How is that a threat? It's just a hand. It's not the hand itself, Diana explained. It's what the hand represents. It's the last conscious decision the human makes before instinct takes over. It means stop now, or I stop you. It's the final offer of peace before violence begins. She showed more footage. A human police officer raising a hand to stop a charging attacker. A human parent raising a hand to prevent a fight between children. A human soldier raising a hand in a war zone. In every case, the gesture carried the same weight. When a human raises their hand like this, everything else has changed too, Diana said. Their breathing has slowed. Their heart rate has actually decreased, not increased. Blood flow is redirecting to major muscle groups. Pain suppression systems are activating. The human brain is preparing the body for violence while simultaneously offering one last chance to avoid it. Why? Asked Pip. Why give a warning at that point? Why not just act? Diana looked at the small creature with something like approval. Good question. The right question. Because humans are social, Diana answered. We evolved in groups, tribes, communities. If humans killed each other every time we disagreed, we would have gone extinct long ago. We needed ways to resolve conflicts without destroying our own communities. The warnings exist to protect both parties, to give everyone a chance to walk away. She changed the display to show statistics, numbers and graphs. Species without clear final warnings have higher rates of lethal outcomes in conflicts, Diana explained. Both parties escalate without clear signals. They don't know when they've crossed the line until it's too late. But species with clear final warnings, like humans, have more conflicts that end without serious injury. Because both sides can see the point of no return, the Bronze said thoughtfully. Exactly, Diana confirmed. The raised hand isn't just a warning. It's information. It tells everyone present that this situation has reached a critical point. Make a choice, de-escalate or face the consequences. Gresh made a dismissive sound. And if someone ignores this warning? If they don't back down? Diana looked at the Dravix for a long moment. Then the human responds with the absolute minimum force necessary to end the threat. Not punishment, not revenge. Just whatever it takes to stop the danger. Minimum force, Gresh repeated, sounding skeptical. Humans are small. What can you really do? Instead of answering directly, Diana pulled up medical data. Injury reports from conflicts involving humans. The students read the statistics in silence. Broken bones, severe concussions, dislocated joints, crushed windpipes. All injuries inflicted by unarmed humans on species that were larger, stronger, and naturally armed with claws or fangs. Humans evolved to hunt and kill prey with our bare hands if necessary, Diana said quietly. We might not have claws, but we have hands that can grip and crush. We might not have fangs, but we have elbows, knees, and heads that can strike with considerable force. And we have something else. What? Pip asked, voice small. Knowledge, Diana replied. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've studied combat extensively. We know where to hit to disable, where to strike to incapacitate, where to apply pressure to cause unconsciousness or death. It's not about strength, it's about precision and understanding anatomy. She showed diagrams. Pressure points, vulnerable areas, strike zones. Every species had them. Humans had learned to find and exploit them. This is why the warning matters, Diana said. Because once a human decides to act, we do it efficiently. We don't thrash around. We don't waste energy. We target the specific points that will end the conflict as quickly as possible. The classroom had grown very quiet. Students who had been dismissive before were now paying close attention. Tomorrow's field exercise will demonstrate this, Diana continued. You'll be in teams, running a simulation. The scenario will involve an escalating conflict. You'll have the opportunity to observe human responses in real time, under stress, in a situation that feels real even though it's controlled. Will you be participating? Asked the Quilvan. I'll be observing, Diana said, but there will be other humans involved as role players. You'll see the graduated responses we've been discussing, and if the situation escalates far enough, you'll see the final warning. And if someone doesn't heed the warning? Gresh asked, a challenge in its voice. Diana met the Dravix's eyes steadily. Then you'll see what happens next, and you'll understand why humans are classified as deathworlders despite lacking natural weapons. She ended the presentation and brought the lights back up. Read the materials I'm sending to your data pads tonight. Study the footage. Pay attention to the details. Tomorrow you'll need to recognize these signals quickly. The students gathered their belongings and filed out. Diana heard them talking among themselves, discussing what they'd learned. Most sounded thoughtful. A few sounded nervous. Gresh left without speaking, but Diana saw the set of its shoulders. The Dravix was angry, feeling challenged. That was dangerous, but also predictable. After the classroom emptied, Diana sat at her desk and reviewed the plan for tomorrow's exercise. She had designed it carefully. Multiple checkpoints where students could make choices, opportunities for de-escalation at every stage, but also pressure points that would push buttons and create stress. Another instructor, a Felvan, stopped by the classroom. I heard about your lesson today. News travels fast, Diana observed. Several students are concerned. They think tomorrow might be dangerous. It might be, Diana admitted. That's why we have safety protocols, medical teams on standby, multiple instructors monitoring. But yes, there's an element of risk. There always is when you're teaching threat assessment. The Dravik student, the Felvin said carefully. It's becoming aggressive, territorial. I've seen it harassing smaller students during breaks. I know, Diana said. I'm watching it. Is it wise to run this exercise with that one in the group? Diana was quiet for a moment, considering. The galaxy is dangerous. Our students will encounter aggressive individuals in the field. Better they learn to handle it here, where we can control the outcome, than out there where mistakes cost lives. You're very calm about risking injury. I'm not risking anything I'm not prepared to handle, Diana replied. She looked up at the Felvin. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. This isn't my first time dealing with an overconfident predator who needs to learn respect for softer species. The Felvin didn't look entirely convinced, but it nodded and left. Diana remained in the classroom thinking. Tomorrow would be revealing. The students would see human threat responses in action. They would learn to read the signs they'd studied today. And Gresh would learn a harder lesson about assumptions, about underestimating others, about the difference between being predator and being prepared. Diana pulled up Gresh's file again, reviewed the history of aggression, the complaints from other students, the warnings from previous instructors. A pattern of behavior that suggested Gresh had never faced real consequences, never encountered something that made it genuinely back down. Tomorrow that would change. Diana closed the file and powered down her desk. Time to go prepare for the exercise. Check equipment, brief the safety teams, review the scenario one more time. Tomorrow her students would learn why the raised hand mattered, why humans gave warnings before acting, and why ignoring those warnings was a mistake that hurt. The outdoor training ground stretched across half a kilometer of Station Harmony 7's recreation level. Diana stood on the observation platform with other instructors, watching her students gear up below. The area had been designed to simulate multiple environments. Rocky terrain on one side, open space in the middle, obstacle courses and buildings on the other end. Teams of 4, Diana called down through the communicator. Mixed species. You'll be running a capture scenario. One team has a data core that the other team needs to retrieve. Non-lethal markers only. The goal is to complete your objective while managing conflict appropriately. Students formed teams. Gresh ended up with the Quilvin, Asil, and Pip the small Quellon. Not the worst combination, but Diana noted how Gresh immediately took charge, positioning the others like pieces on a game board rather than teammates. The opposing team had the Bront and 3 medium-sized species. More balanced. Better coordination already visible in how they discussed strategy. Rules, Diana continued. Marked hits count as incapacitation. If you're marked, you sit down where you are and wait for the round to end. Excessive force results in immediate disqualification. Questions? No one spoke up. Begin. The team scattered. Diana watched from above, making notes on her data pad. The Bront's team moved carefully, using cover, communicating well. Gresh's team was more chaotic. The Draviks kept pushing forward aggressively while the others tried to coordinate. 10 minutes in, first contact happened. The teams spotted each other across an open area. Both sides took cover. This was the moment where good training showed. The teams should assess, communicate, decide whether to engage or find an alternate route. Gresh didn't wait. The Draviks broke from cover and charged toward the opposing team's position. Its teammates called out, trying to coordinate, but Gresh ignored them. Reckless, another instructor muttered beside Diana. Watch, Diana replied quietly. The opposing team scattered. The Bront held position while the others flanked. Standard tactics. Gresh ran straight at the Bront, apparently thinking size and aggression would win. The Bront marked Gresh with a paint round before the Draviks got close. Hit square in the chest. Gresh should have sat down, signaling incapacitation. Instead, Gresh kept coming. Gresh, you're marked, Diana said over the communicator. Sit down. You're out of the scenario. Gresh ignored her, reached the Bront and physically shoved the larger creature. The Bront stumbled back, surprised. Diana was already moving. She dropped from the observation platform, using the access ladder at speed. Other instructors were moving too, converging on the situation. But the scenario was evolving faster than anyone expected. Gresh's team, seeing their leader ignore the rules, hesitated. Pip, the small Quellan, tried to approach Gresh to calm it down. Gresh turned and snapped at Pip, teeth showing. "Back off," Gresh snarled. "This is how real combat works. No paint markers. No sitting down politely." Pip retreated, wings trembling. The rest of the teams had stopped, watching. Everyone understood something had gone wrong. This wasn't training anymore. Diana crossed the open ground quickly. Not running. Running would signal panic. She walked with purpose, closing the distance while her mind ran through options. Gresh was in a state. Adrenaline high, aggression unleashed, not listening to authority. Gresh had cornered Pip against a barrier wall now. The other students were backing away, unsure what to do. Instructors were approaching from other angles, but Diana was closest. "This is what you should fear," Gresh was saying to Pip, looming over the small creature. "Real predators. Not humans with their polite warnings and their little hand gestures." Gresh raised one clawed hand. Not in warning, in threat. The claws extended fully, sharp enough to tear through Pip's soft feathers and the flesh beneath. Diana was 20 feet away. Too far to physically reach Gresh before those claws came down. Other instructors were shouting, running now, reaching for emergency shutdown controls that would flood the area with knockout gas. But knockout gas took 3 seconds to work. Pip didn't have 3 seconds. Diana stopped walking, planted her feet, and stepped directly into Gresh's line of sight. The Dravik saw movement, turned its head, saw Diana, started to dismiss her as it had before, just another soft human who couldn't possibly stop it. Then Diana raised her hand, palm forward, shoulder height, steady as stone, and everything about her changed. Her face emptied of expression. Not angry, not scared, nothing, just completely flat. Her eyes locked onto Gresh with absolute focus. The kind of focus a microscope has. The kind of focus a targeting system has. Every bit of her attention compressed down to one point. The threat in front of her. Her stance settled into perfect balance. Weight distributed, knees slightly bent, ready to move in any direction. Her breathing slowed, visible even from a distance. Long, controlled breaths. The hand stayed raised, not shaking, not wavering. Just there. A stop sign. A boundary. A final offer. Gresh froze. Not because Diana told it to. Not because of the hand itself. But because something in the Dravik's predator brain screamed danger. Every instinct that had kept its species alive for millions of years suddenly fired at once. This wasn't prey. This wasn't helpless. This was something that had decided exactly what would happen next, and there was no uncertainty in it. No hesitation. No doubt. Diana's voice when she spoke was quiet, barely above conversational volume, but it carried across the training ground in the sudden silence. Step back. 2 words. Flat tone. No anger, no emotion. Just instruction. Gresh stood frozen, claws still extended, looming over Pip. Its brain was processing. This didn't match expectations. Humans were supposed to be weak, easy to intimidate, easy to dominate, but Diana wasn't showing any of those things. She showed certainty. Complete, absolute certainty about what she could and would do. The hand stayed raised. Diana hadn't blinked, hadn't looked away, hadn't moved except for those slow, controlled breaths. 3 seconds passed. The longest 3 seconds of the training exercise. Other instructors had reached the scene now, surrounding the area. Medical teams were on standby. Someone had activated the knockout gas system, waiting for Diana's signal to release it. But Diana hadn't given the signal. She just stood there, hand raised, eyes locked on Gresh, waiting for the Dravik's to make a choice. "Step back," Diana repeated. Same tone, same volume. No louder, no angrier. Just the instruction, repeated. Gresh's claws trembled. The Dravik's breathing was fast, panicked almost. It had suddenly realized it had made a terrible mistake. Not because Diana had done anything violent, but because everything about her posture said she was prepared to, and more than prepared. Willing, committed, already decided. The hand was the last warning. After this came action. And Gresh's instincts were screaming that it did not want to find out what that action looked like. Slowly, very slowly, Gresh lowered its claws, took 1 step back from Pip, then another. Its eyes never left Diana, watching her the way a small creature watches a larger predator. Diana's hand stayed up for another second, making sure, confirming the choice. Then just as slowly as it had risen, her hand came down. Her posture relaxed fractionally. The targeting focus in her eyes softened. Her breathing remained slow and controlled, but some of the emptiness left her expression. "Security team," Diana said, voice still quiet. "Remove Gresh from the training area. Medical evaluation and containment until behavioral review is complete." Two large instructors, both from heavy gravity worlds, approached Gresh carefully. The Dravix didn't resist, allowed itself to be escorted away. It kept looking back at Diana, though, trying to understand what had just happened. Diana moved to Pip, knelt down beside the small Quelon which was shaking. "Are you hurt?" "No," Pip managed. "Scared, but not hurt." "Good," Diana said. Her voice had warmth again. The humanity had returned to her features. "You did the right thing trying to calm the situation. But when someone is that far into aggression, sometimes words don't work anymore." She helped Pip stand, checked the creature over carefully. No wounds, no injuries, just fear, which would fade. The other students had gathered at a respectful distance, watching. All of them looked shaken. They had seen something they didn't fully understand, but they knew it was significant. Diana turned to face them. That was the final warning, the raised hand. "Did you see what happened?" Slow nods, uncertain agreement. "Before I raised my hand, what was my state?" Diana asked. "Walking," the Quilvan said. "Calm, approaching normally." "After I raised my hand?" Silence. The students looked at each other. "You changed," the Bront finally said. "Everything changed, your face, your stance, your breathing. You became something different." "I became focused," Diana corrected. "Single-minded. I had assessed the threat, calculated the response, and committed to action." The hand was the last chance for Gresh to choose differently. "After that, I would have done whatever was necessary to protect Pip." "What would you have done?" Pip asked, voice small. Diana looked at the small creature with gentle eyes. "Whatever worked. Whatever was needed. Not more than necessary, but enough to stop the threat immediately. That's what human combat training emphasizes. Efficiency, precision, minimum force to achieve safety." She stood and addressed the whole class. "This is why the warning matters, because humans are capable of considerable violence when needed. We evolved to hunt and fight and survive on a world that constantly tried to kill us. But we're also social. We don't want to hurt others if we can avoid it. So we warn. We give levels of escalation. We offer exits at every stage. The raised hand is the last exit," the Quilvan said, understanding. "Yes," Diana confirmed. "After that, the human has already decided what happens next. The only choice remaining is whether the threat backs down or forces the human to follow through." The students absorbed this. Diana could see understanding dawning in their faces. This wasn't theory anymore. They had seen it, felt it. The atmosphere when she raised her hand had been palpable. "Training is done for today," Diana said. "Go to your quarters. Process what you saw. Tomorrow we'll debrief properly, discuss what happened, and talk about how to recognize these signs in the field." The students filed out slowly, talking in small groups. Diana watched them go. She saw how they looked at her now, different than before, with new respect, maybe a little fear. That was okay. Healthy even. They needed to understand what humans were capable of, not just in theory, but in reality. An instructor approached. The Felvan who had warned Diana yesterday. "That was dangerous." "It was necessary," Diana replied. "You could have used the knockout gas immediately." "And Gresh would have learned nothing," Diana said. "It would have thought the gas stopped it, not its own choice. This way, it learned something true. It learned what happens when you push a human to the final warning. And more importantly, it learned to recognize that warning so it doesn't push that far again." The Felvan was quiet for a moment. You were really prepared to hurt it. Yes, Diana said simply. To protect Pip. That's what the warning means. It's not a bluff, it's not theater, it's a genuine offer. Choose differently or face what comes next. And the students saw that. The students needed to see that, Diana corrected. They're going to be security officers. They'll face situations where beings are in danger. They need to understand their own capacity for response and know how to recognize it in others, especially humans. Today they learned both. The Felvin nodded slowly. I suppose you're right, though I still think it was dangerous. Life is dangerous, Diana said. We're just teaching them how to navigate it without making fatal mistakes. She looked out over the training ground. At the spot where she had stood, hand raised, giving Gresh that final choice. The moment was burned into every student's memory now. They would remember. They would recognize the signs next time. That was the point of teaching. Not to share information, but to create understanding. And sometimes understanding required experience, not just words. Diana gathered her equipment and headed back inside. Tomorrow they would debrief, talk through what happened, process the emotions, reinforce the lessons. But today's lesson was complete. Her students had seen the human final warning, and they would never forget what it looked like. The classroom felt different when students filed in the next morning. Quieter, more thoughtful. Diana noticed how they looked at her now, not with fear exactly, but with a new kind of awareness. They had seen something yesterday that changed their understanding. She waited until everyone was seated before speaking. Yesterday was intense. Today we're going to break down what happened, understand it, process it, and talk about how you'll use this knowledge in the field. Diana pulled up the recorded footage from the training ground. The students watched themselves on screen. The exercise beginning normally, Gresh's first rule violation, the escalation, then the critical moment. Diana froze the video at the point where she stepped into view, before the hand raised. What do you see in my body language here? She asked. You're walking, Pip said quietly. The small Quellon had returned to class, though still visibly shaken. But different than before, more purposeful. Good observation, Diana said. I'm moving with intent. No hesitation, no uncertainty. This is already a shift from casual movement. What else? Your face, the Bront rumbled. Already changing, less friendly, more focused. Diana nodded and advanced the video. Frame by frame, her hand beginning to rise. Here's the transition, she said. Watch carefully. This is what you need to recognize in the field. The students leaned forward, studying the screen. Diana's expression emptying, her stance settling, her breathing changing from normal to those slow, controlled breaths. My body is preparing for violence, Diana explained, but not in the way most species prepare. Humans don't tense up. We don't speed up. We actually slow down. Heart rate decreases. Breathing becomes deliberate. This is our combat state. Clear mind, controlled body, total focus. Why slow down? Asked the Quilvin, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Most predators speed up, attack fast. Because humans hunt through persistence and precision, not speed, Diana answered. Fast movements waste energy and reduce accuracy. Humans in combat mode conserve energy and focus on effective action. We're calculating, planning, preparing to act efficiently. She played the video further, the hand rising, stopping at shoulder height, the absolute stillness that followed. The raised hand, Diana said. Everyone saw it, but what did it mean in that moment? The students were quiet. Then the Bront spoke. It meant stop or else. More than that, Diana said. It meant I had already decided what else was. The decision was made. Gresh just had to choose which outcome happened. Retreat, or find out what I was prepared to do. But you didn't attack, Pip pointed out. You just stood there. Because Gresh made the right choice, Diana replied. The hand is a final offer, a last chance. If Gresh had continued toward you, or had turned to attack me, I would have acted immediately. But Gresh stepped back, chose survival over pride. She showed the footage of Gresh's reaction, the Dravix freezing mid-motion, the visible conflict in its posture, then the slow retreat. What happened in Gresh's mind in that moment? Diana asked. Anyone? It recognized danger, the sill said from its water tank. Real danger, not theoretical. Exactly, Diana confirmed. Gresh's instincts overrode its conscious thought. The predator part of its brain saw something in my posture, my focus, my certainty, and understood that continuing was a bad idea. But humans are smaller than Draviks, the Quilvan objected. Softer, no natural weapons. Why did Gresh's instincts fear you? Diana smiled slightly. Because instincts don't measure size or claws. They measure certainty, confidence. Predators, in nature, know to avoid prey that acts too confident, too calm. It usually means the prey is either poisonous, dangerous in ways not immediately visible, or prepared to fight harder than expected. The cost of attacking might exceed the benefit. She pulled up more footage, this time from Earth. Videos of various predators encountering unusual prey responses. A honey badger facing a lion, a mongoose confronting a cobra. Small creatures showing absolute confidence against much larger threats. See how the larger predator backs down? Diana pointed out. Size doesn't matter when the smaller creature radiates certainty. The predator's brain calculates risk versus reward and decides it's not worth it. So the raised hand is about projecting certainty, the Bront said. The raised hand is the symbol, Diana corrected. But it only works because everything else supports it. The stance, the breathing, the focus, the emptied expression, all of it combines to create a message that bypasses conscious thought and speaks directly to survival instincts. She turned off the footage and faced the class directly. This is why understanding human threat displays matters. In the field, you'll work with humans. Sometimes you'll need to know when a human is preparing to act. Other times you might need to recognize when you're pushing a human too far. What would have happened if Gresh hadn't stopped? Pip asked. The question everyone wanted answered. Diana was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. I would have moved to intercept. Position myself between Gresh and you. Gresh would have either backed down at that point or would have attacked me instead. If attacked, I would have responded with joint locks and pressure point strikes designed to incapacitate without permanent damage. Could you have won? The Quilvan asked. Gresh is larger, stronger, has natural weapons. Winning isn't about strength, Diana replied. It's about knowledge. Humans have studied combat for thousands of years. We know where every species is vulnerable, the joints that bend wrong directions, the nerve clusters that cause temporary paralysis, the pressure points that trigger unconsciousness. Gresh might be stronger, but I know exactly where and how to strike to neutralize that strength. She pulled up anatomical diagrams, showed the students their own vulnerable points. Everyone had them. The hinges in the Quilvan's leg joints, the soft tissue behind the bronze ear plates, the gill covers on the sill, the wing joints on Pip's species. This isn't meant to frighten you, Diana said. It's meant to help you understand. Humans succeeded not through strength, but through knowledge and persistence. We study, we learn, we adapt, and we remember. Is that why you're classified as deathworlders? Pip asked. Because you know how to hurt others? No, Diana said firmly. We're classified as deathworlders because we survived on a planet that constantly tried to kill us. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, diseases, natural disasters. Humans evolved to keep going when everything said give up, to adapt when circumstances changed, to work together when alone meant death. She showed images of Earth, beautiful but harsh, deserts that burned during the day and froze at night, jungles where everything was either poisonous or predatory, oceans with storms that could sink ships, mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. Every human alive comes from survivors, Diana said. Countless generations of humans who refused to die, who learned to read weather patterns, to track prey for days, to build shelter from nothing, to treat injuries without medical technology. That persistence is in our genetics now. When things get bad, humans don't give up. We get stubborn. The students were listening intently. This was more than just threat assessment now. This was understanding what humans were. So when you see a human raise their hand in warning, Diana continued, understand what you're really seeing. You're seeing thousands of years of survival instinct. You're seeing the patience of a pursuit predator. You're seeing the calculation of a social creature that knows violence damages the community. And you're seeing the certainty of someone who has already decided what happens next. How do we avoid pushing humans to that point? The Bront asked. Pay attention to the earlier warnings, Diana replied. Humans don't go from calm to raised hand instantly. We give verbal warnings first. Stop that. Back off. Don't do that. Listen to those. Respect boundaries when they're set with words. If you ignore verbal warnings, humans will escalate. Postural changes. Taking space. Moving toward the threat. These are all chances to back down before things get serious. She showed video examples of humans in various conflict situations, pointing out the graduated responses. The raised hand is level 5, Diana said. Most conflicts should never reach level 5. If you're reading human body language correctly and respecting boundaries, you'll never see a human reach that point. But if you do see it, understand that you're out of chances. The next step is action. What if someone doesn't know human signals? Pip asked. What if they're from a culture that hasn't met humans before? That's a fair concern, Diana acknowledged. And it's why humans try to be very clear with verbal communication first. We say things directly. We use words. We give explicit instructions. This is partly because human culture values directness, but also because we know our subtle signals might not translate across species. But the raised hand worked on Gresh, the Quilvin pointed out. Because some signals are universal, Diana said. The raised hand appears in Earth cultures across thousands of years. Different languages, different customs, but the same gesture meaning stop. There's something primal about it, something that speaks to a deeper level of understanding. When a human raises their hand like that, most sapient beings instinctively understand it's significant, even if they don't know exactly what it means. She showed more footage from Earth history, humans using the raised hand in countless contexts, stopping fights, halting crowds, preventing accidents, always the same gesture, always carrying weight. Tomorrow you'll have another practical exercise, Diana said. Less intense than yesterday. You'll practice recognizing human signals in controlled scenarios. You'll work with human role players who will demonstrate the graduated responses. Your job is to identify when escalation is happening and practice appropriate de-escalation techniques. The students looked more comfortable with this plan, less likely to end with someone nearly getting hurt. What about Gresh? The Quilvin asked. Will it return to class? Diana's expression became more serious. Gresh is undergoing evaluation, behavioral review, psychological assessment, determination of fitness to continue training. What happened yesterday was a serious violation, not just of rules but of the fundamental principle this academy teaches: control. Security officers must control themselves before they can help control situations. Did Gresh learn anything? Pip asked softly. Yes, Diana said with certainty. Gresh learned that size and natural weapons don't guarantee dominance. Gresh learned that humans give warnings for a reason. And most importantly, Gresh learned what it feels like when a deathworlder decides you're a threat. That's not a comfortable lesson, but it's a necessary one. She looked around at her students. Any species can be dangerous. You're all dangerous in your own ways. The Quilvin could tear through armor. The Bront could crush bones with its weight. The Sill could drown someone in seconds. And yes, humans can fight with surprising effectiveness despite lacking natural weapons. But danger isn't the point. Control is the point. Knowing when to use your capabilities and when to hold back. That's what separates security officers from thugs. The students absorbed this. Diana could see understanding settling in. They were processing not just the technical lesson about threat displays, but the deeper lesson about responsibility and restraint. Class dismissed, Diana said. Reflect on what you learned. Tomorrow we practice recognition and response. Come prepared to work with human partners. As the students filed out, several of them approached Diana individually. The Quilvin wanted to discuss pressure points in its species. The Bront asked about human endurance capabilities. Pip simply said thank you for intervening yesterday. Diana answered each question patiently, providing information and encouragement. This was good. They were engaged now, genuinely curious about humans rather than dismissive. When the classroom finally emptied, Diana sat at her desk and made notes. The lesson had worked. The students understood now. They had seen theory become practice. They had witnessed what human warnings looked like in real stress situations, and they had learned why those warnings mattered. Tomorrow they would practice. Build skills. Develop the ability to read human signals quickly and accurately. Within a few weeks, they would be able to spot a human threat display across a crowded room. They would recognize the subtle shifts that meant a human was moving from calm to prepared. That knowledge could save lives, theirs and others. Diana powered down her equipment and left the classroom. Outside, Station Harmony 7 continued its daily rhythm. Hundreds of species living together, working together, building something larger than themselves. It worked because everyone learned to recognize each other's signals, respect each other's boundaries, understand that different didn't mean lesser. That was the real lesson. Not that humans were dangerous, but that everyone was dangerous, and cooperation required understanding, communication, and mutual respect. The raised hand was just one symbol in a vast language of coexistence. Diana's job was teaching her students to read that language fluently, one lesson at a time. 3 weeks had passed since the incident with Gresh. Diana stood in the observation room watching her students run through their final practical assessment. Each student paired with a human volunteer, navigating scenarios designed to test threat recognition and de-escalation skills. The difference was remarkable. Where once students had missed or misread human signals, now they spotted them immediately. When a human volunteer squared their shoulders, students recognized postural warning. When tone shifted from friendly to firm, students adjusted their approach. When a human's breathing changed, students knew escalation was happening. Most importantly, not a single student had pushed a human to level 5 during the entire 3 weeks. They recognized the earlier warnings and responded appropriately. Diana made notes on her evaluation pad, marking each student's performance. The Quilvan demonstrated excellent boundary recognition. The Bront showed impressive gentleness despite its size, understanding that power meant nothing without control. The Sil worked smoothly with its human partner, coordinating despite radically different body types. And Pip, the small Quellan who had nearly been hurt, showed the most growth of all. The little creature moved with new confidence, recognizing threats early and responding with clear communication and appropriate distance maintenance. The door to the observation room opened. Diana turned to see Gresh enter, accompanied by a supervisor. The Dravix looked different, smaller somehow, though its physical size hadn't changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something more thoughtful. "Instructor Diana," the supervisor said, "Gresh has completed behavioral evaluation and wishes to speak with you." Diana nodded. The supervisor left, closing the door behind them. Diana and Gresh stood in silence for a moment, watching the students below. "They learned," Gresh said finally. "I watched the recordings of their training. They recognize human warnings now." "Yes," Diana agreed. "They learned because they were willing to learn." Gresh was quiet. "Then I wasn't willing." "Not at first." "No," Diana said simply. "You weren't." "I've been thinking about that moment," Gresh continued. "When you raised your hand, I've watched the recording many times, trying to understand what I felt." Diana waited, letting Gresh work through the thoughts. "I was afraid," Gresh admitted. "Truly afraid. For the first time since I was a juvenile. I'm larger than you, stronger, natural weapons. But none of that mattered when you raised your hand. Because you weren't afraid of me at all." "Fear is a useful emotion," Diana said. "It keeps us alive. But it only works if we listen to it." "My species considers fear weakness," Gresh said. "We're taught to ignore it, to push through it. That's what I was doing with Pip, proving I wasn't afraid of anything." "And what did that prove?" Diana asked. "That I was a fool," Gresh replied. There was no self-pity in its voice, just recognition. "I pushed someone smaller, weaker because I could, because it made me feel strong. But real strength is what you showed. Control, restraint, choosing not to hurt someone when you easily could." Diana turned to face the Dravix fully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to return to class," Gresh said. "I want to complete the training. But I need you to know I understand now. The warnings aren't weakness. They're wisdom. They're the difference between an officer and a thug." "You used those exact words," Diana noted. "Did you read the lecture transcripts?" "All of them," Gresh confirmed. "Multiple times. I'm trying to understand what I missed, what I was too arrogant to see." Diana studied the Dravix carefully, looking for signs of genuine change versus performance. After her years of teaching, she had learned to tell the difference. "What would you do differently?" Diana asked. "If you could go back to that moment with Pip?" "I would have sat down when I was marked," Gresh said immediately. "Followed the rules. Accepted the outcome. But before that, I would have listened to my team, coordinated instead of charging ahead, treated them as teammates instead of followers. And if you saw another student behaving the way you did, Gresh hesitated. I would want to stop them, intervene, but I don't know if I would have the courage to stand up to aggression the way you did. Courage can be learned, Diana said. Like anything else, you start by making the choice even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She pulled up the training schedule on her pad. You've missed 3 weeks. You'll need to catch up on exercises and demonstrate proficiency in threat recognition before rejoining regular classes. I'll do whatever is required, Gresh said. You'll also need to apologize to Pip, Diana continued. Not just words. Demonstrate through actions that you understand what you did wrong. Pip was terrified. That fear doesn't just disappear because time passed. I understand, Gresh said. I'll make it right. However long it takes, Diana made a note in her pad. Report to supplemental training tomorrow morning. You'll work with me directly until I'm satisfied you can safely rejoin the class. This isn't punishment. It's ensuring everyone's safety, including yours. Thank you, instructor, Gresh said. The Draviks turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. When you raised your hand, what would you have done if I hadn't backed down? Diana looked at Gresh steadily. Exactly what I needed to do to protect Pip. Nothing more, nothing less. Would you have hurt me badly? Badly enough to stop you, Diana replied. Humans don't fight for pride or dominance. We fight to protect. The level of force matches the level of threat. You were threatening serious harm to a smaller being. I would have responded with whatever force was necessary to end that threat immediately. Gresh absorbed this. I'm glad I stepped back. So am I, Diana said. Violence should always be the last option. But when it's necessary, it should be swift, effective, and proportional. That's what you'll learn in the supplemental training. After Gresh left, Diana returned her attention to the students below. The final assessment was wrapping up. Human volunteers were completing feedback forms, rating each student's performance. Another instructor entered the observation room. The Felvan who had been concerned about Diana's methods weeks ago. I owe you an apology, the Felvan said without preamble. I doubted your approach, thought it was too risky, but the results speak for themselves. Diana watched her students celebrating below, congratulating each other on completing the assessment. Teaching isn't about avoiding all risk. It's about providing experiences that create genuine understanding. These students didn't just learn facts, they learned truth. The truth about humans, the Felvan said. The truth about everyone, Diana corrected. That we're all capable of harm. That we all have vulnerable points and dangerous capabilities. But we're also all capable of choosing restraint. Of recognizing warnings and respecting boundaries. Of building cooperation instead of forcing dominance. Below, Pip was talking animatedly with its human partner. The small Quilon who had been so frightened was now confident, engaged, learning. That one has grown the most, the Felvan observed. Trauma can become wisdom if processed correctly, Diana said. Pip faced a genuine threat and saw how it resolved. Learned that warnings work, that intervention happens, that being small doesn't mean being helpless. Those lessons will serve Pip well in the field. The Felvan was quiet for a moment. Do you think Gresh really changed? Time will tell, Diana replied. But I saw something in its eyes today. Humility. Recognition of its own fallibility. That's the foundation of real growth. Whether Gresh builds on that foundation is up to Gresh. The students below were filing out of the training area. Diana gathered her materials, preparing for the final debriefing session. In the classroom, students settled into their seats one last time. This was the end of the threat assessment unit. Tomorrow they would move on to other topics in their security training. You've all come a long way, Diana began. 3 weeks ago, most of you couldn't read basic human body language. Today, you spotted level 2 warnings without hesitation. You adjusted your approaches appropriately. You demonstrated exactly what this academy aims to teach: awareness, communication, and control. She pulled up performance statistics. 100% success rate on threat recognition. 0 escalations to level 5. Excellent coordination with human partners. These numbers represent real skill development. The students looked proud. Rightfully so, but remember, Diana continued, this was just one unit, one piece of a much larger puzzle. In the field, you'll encounter hundreds of species, each with their own warning systems. each with their own boundaries, each with their own dangerous capabilities. The principles remain the same, though, the Bront said. Recognition, respect, response. Exactly, Diana confirmed. Learn to read the signals, respect the boundaries, respond appropriately to the level of warning. These principles work across species because they're based on something universal, the desire to resolve conflicts without unnecessary harm. What about species that don't give warnings? Asked the Quilvan. Species that attack without signals? Those exist, Diana acknowledged, but they're rare. Most sapient species developed communication systems specifically to avoid unnecessary conflict. The species that didn't either went extinct from internal fighting or remained isolated from galactic society. Anyone you meet in council space will have some form of threat communication. Your job is learning to recognize it. She showed images of various species, each demonstrating their warning displays. Some obvious, others subtle, all meaningful. Humans give graduated warnings because we understand violence intimately, Diana said. We know how much it costs. Not just physically, but socially, emotionally. Every fight damages something. So we warn, we escalate slowly, we offer exits. The raised hand is the final offer because after that, the cost has been accepted. But we always prefer the warning to work. Has anyone ever ignored your raised hand? Pip asked. In the field, not in training? Diana was quiet for a moment, deciding how much to share. Yes, twice in my career. Both times the situation ended badly for the person who ignored it. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because they forced an outcome through their choices. That's what you need to understand. The warning isn't a bluff. It's a genuine offer. Last chance. Choose wisely. What happened to them? The Sill asked from its tank. They survived, Diana said. Injured but alive. Because I used appropriate force. Enough to stop the threat, not enough to kill. That's the discipline humans develop. We're capable of lethal force, but we practice restraint. We calculate, we control. We stop when the threat stops. She looked around at her students. You'll all face situations in your careers where someone ignores warnings, where escalation happens despite your best efforts at de-escalation. In those moments, remember what you learned here. React appropriately to the level of threat. Use minimum necessary force. Protect the innocent. And after it's over, process it properly. Violence, even justified violence, takes a toll. The classroom was solemn now, understanding the weight of responsibility they were preparing to accept. But most of the time, Diana said, her tone lightening slightly, you won't need to fight. Most of the time, proper threat recognition prevents conflict. Someone starts to escalate. You spot the signs early, you intervene before it reaches crisis point. That's the real goal. Prevention, not reaction. She showed statistics from Council security forces. The vast majority of incidents resolved without violence. Because trained officers recognized escalation patterns and intervened appropriately. This is what you're training for, Diana said. Not to be warriors. To be peacekeepers. To be the people who understand danger well enough to prevent it. Who recognize warnings well enough to heed them and enforce them. Who create safety through awareness and communication. The students nodded, understanding settling in. Final thoughts? Diana asked. The Bront raised one massive limb. Thank you for teaching us. Especially for teaching us the hard way. We needed to see it, not just hear about it. Murmurs of agreement from other students. Pip stood up, speaking loudly despite its small size. Thank you for protecting me. And for teaching all of us that size doesn't determine strength. Control determines strength. Diana smiled. You're all going to be excellent officers. Remember what you learned here. Carry it forward. And when you see a human raise their hand in warning, you'll know exactly what it means and how to respond. Stop now or else, the Quilvan said. More than that, Diana corrected gently. It means I'm giving you one last chance to choose differently. To step back. To de-escalate. To survive this moment without anyone getting hurt. That's the gift of the warning. The opportunity to make a better choice. She stood. Class dismissed. Congratulations on completing this unit. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish in the field. The students filed out, but many stopped to thank Diana personally, to shake her hand or touch her shoulder or offer their species equivalent of gratitude. She accepted each gesture with warmth and encouragement. When the classroom finally emptied, Diana sat at her desk and completed her final evaluations. Every student had passed. Every student had grown. They had entered her class thinking they understood threat assessment. They left understanding it at a much deeper level. The door opened one last time. Gresh stood in the doorway, hesitant. "May I enter?" the Dravix asked. "Yes," Diana said. Gresh approached slowly. "I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to learn the right way." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Diana said. "What they do with it determines who they are." "I won't waste mine," Gresh promised. "I know," Diana said. And she meant it. Something had genuinely changed in the Dravix. The arrogance had been burned away, replaced by something harder and more valuable: humility and understanding. After Gresh left, Diana powered down her classroom for the day. She walked through the corridors of Station Harmony 7, watching countless species going about their lives, interacting, communicating, coexisting. It worked because everyone learned each other's languages, not just words, but the deeper languages of body and boundary and warning, because everyone accepted that cooperation required understanding, and understanding required teaching. Patient, careful, sometimes difficult teaching, but worth it, always worth it. Diana reached her quarters and looked out at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, her former students were working, keeping the peace, recognizing threats, preventing conflicts, making the galaxy a safer place through awareness and skill. That was the real lesson, not that humans were dangerous, but that everyone was dangerous, and civilization was the agreement to control that danger, to warn before acting, to offer chances, to choose cooperation over conflict whenever possible. The raised hand was just one symbol in that larger agreement. A reminder that violence should always be the last option, but also a promise that when necessary, those trained to protect would act decisively. Diana had taught that lesson 11 times now, would teach it many more times in the years ahead. Each class different, each student unique, but the core truth remained the same. Warnings work when they're genuine, when they come from someone who truly understands what comes after. When they offer a real choice, a real chance, a real exit. That was the human gift to galactic security, not superior strength or better weapons, but the wisdom to warn, the discipline to wait, and the certainty to act when warnings failed. The raised hand. The final offer. The last chance to choose differently, and the absolute commitment to follow through if that chance was refused. That was what made it work. That was what kept the peace. That was what her students carried forward into the galaxy. Understanding, control, and the courage to stand between danger and innocence with nothing but certainty and skill. Diana turned from the window. Tomorrow would bring new students, new lessons, new opportunities to share what humans had learned through thousands of years of survival. For now she rested, satisfied that once again she had taught truth, had created understanding, had prepared the next generation of peacekeepers. The work continued. The teaching never ended. But every student who learned to recognize and respect warnings made the galaxy a little safer, and that was worth everything,